Jaime found himself surrounded by the deafening sound of machines as he worked in the factory. The heat and fatigue weighed on him, but what really bothered him was the clock, which seemed to be moving too fast. Every passing minute made him more anxious. Today was a special day, his daughter Nahla's 9th birthday, and he needed to be home for the small celebration. He knew that Kate, his late wife's sister, would be there to help, as she always did, but that didn't ease the weight on his chest. Since Rachel had passed away, Jaime had become everything to Nahla: father, protector, friend. He did what he could to keep the family together and happy, despite his poorly paid job and long hours at the factory. As he glanced at the clock for the 3rd time in that hour, Jaime felt panic rise. His shift was almost over, but he still had to catch the bus and buy a cake. Nahla hadn't asked for expensive gifts or new clothes. All she wanted was a cake to celebrate her birthday, a simple request, but one that weighed heavily on Jaime's heart, as he knew he didn't have much money. Even so, he would do anything to ensure that precious smile didn't disappear. When the end-of-shift whistle blew, Jaime hurriedly grabbed his things and ran to the bus stop. Time seemed shorter than usual. He made this journey every day, but at that moment, every second counted, and he couldn't be late for his daughter's birthday. However, there was a problem: time was not on his side, and he knew that the most affordable bakery was too far to get the cake and arrive on time. Then he spotted an elegant bakery along the way. The storefront was inviting, with windows full of fresh bread, decorated pastries, and wonderful cakes. He had never entered this bakery before, as he knew it was expensive, frequented by wealthy families. But it was his only option on the way, the only chance to get something special for Nahla. Jaime entered the bakery, the sweet smell of baked goods filling the air, almost distracting him from his growing anxiety. He looked around, eyeing the intricately decorated cakes in the display case. Each one was more beautiful than the next. But as his eyes scanned the prices, the weight on his chest increased. The prices were absurd for what he could afford. Jaime walked slowly to the counter, his eyes moving from cake to cake. The money in his pocket felt too small compared to the impressive cakes. The bakery was almost empty, except for an older man sitting at a table in the back. He seemed to be on the phone, involved in a serious conversation, but Jaime was too distracted to pay attention. All that mattered now was choosing something he could afford that was at least good enough for his daughter. After a few minutes of internal struggle, Jaime chose a cupcake, small but elegant, with colored frosting and a cherry on top. "Is this it?" he thought. "A cupcake for my daughter's birthday?" He felt defeated. The only thing Nahla had asked for was a cake, and all he could give her was a small cupcake. His thoughts were dark as he picked up a simple candle, knowing she deserved much more. With the cupcake and candle in hand, Jaime went to the cashier. The discomfort and shame filled his mind. He tried not to think about Nahla's disappointment when she realized she wouldn't have a real birthday cake. He knew his daughter had always been understanding, always trying not to burden him, but this was the only thing she had asked for. Jaime handed over the money to the cashier, watching the small amount left in his pocket. It wasn't enough for a full cake, but it was what he could give. "It will be enough," he tried to convince himself. While waiting in line, still lost in thought, he felt someone's gaze on him. A well-dressed man, about 50 years old, stood behind him, watching closely what Jaime had in his hands. The man had a curious yet serious expression. It was the same man who had been on the phone earlier. When Jaime finally paid and thanked the cashier, feeling defeated, he heard a soft but firm voice right behind him. "Is it someone's birthday, son?" the man asked, with a curious and genuine look. Jaime looked at the man behind him, still trying to process the question. It was a simple comment, but the answer was heavier than he cared to admit. Holding the cupcake and candle, he tried to hide his disappointment, though it was difficult. "Yes, it's my daughter's birthday," he repeated, trying to smile. The man glanced at the cupcake for a moment and frowned, as if processing something beyond that simple question. What would come next, Jaime didn't imagine, but he was about to discover that this small moment would change the course of his life. "A cupcake, huh?" the man commented, leaning slightly to look at the small treat. I hope the party's small, and these prices don't help, right? He smiled slightly, looking at the shelves full of expensive pastries. This bakery is definitely for those who can afford it. Jaime, a little uncomfortable with the observation, replied timidly, as if trying to justify choosing this place. Well, yes, it's an expensive bakery. But the price makes sense. They use top-quality ingredients. See that open bag of flour back there? Jaime said, pointing behind the counter. It's the best on the market. I've eaten here once, and I remember how delicious the pastries were. And their reputation also adds to the price. So, although it's pricey, it's justified. Carl raised his eyebrows, surprised by Jaime's detailed response. He hadn't expected such a well-founded explanation. The way Jaime calmly and articulately reasoned impressed him. You seem to know a lot about quality and value, Carl said, smiling. But even with all that quality, a cupcake isn't a birthday cake. Jaime felt the weight of Carl's words, though they were spoken kindly. It's all I can afford right now, he replied, trying to maintain a smile. But my daughter has always been understanding. She's never asked for big things, so I think what matters is that we're together. Carl nodded, understanding what Jaime was trying to say. There was something in that simple and sincere justification that touched something deep. Without hesitation, Carl leaned slightly and made an offer that would change Jaime's day, and perhaps his life. Let me do something for you, then, Carl said gently. I'll take this cupcake, and you choose a real cake. I'll pay. Your daughter deserves that. Jaime's eyes widened, the shock evident on his face. What? No, I can't accept that, he tried to refuse, feeling embarrassed by the offer. The last thing he wanted was to appear as if he was begging for help. Carl shook his head, still wearing that kind smile. It's not about accepting, son. We've all been through tough times. Pick a cake, and I'll take care of it. Consider it a gift. But the cupcake is mine. Jaime stood in silence for a few moments, feeling torn. Part of him wanted to refuse, to hold on to the little pride he had. He knew that Kate and Nahla would never judge him, but something inside him felt the pressure of being the provider, the father who gives his daughter everything she needs, without relying on anyone else. However, faced with this unexpected kindness, Jaime saw no way out. He knew this was a chance to give his daughter the birthday she had dreamed of. With a deep sigh and a grateful smile, he looked at Carl. Thank you so much. I don't even know what to say. Carl simply nodded, encouraging Jaime to go ahead. Reluctant but deeply grateful, Jaime turned his eyes to the display case and chose a simple yet beautiful cake, with delicate frosting and soft colors. It was far more than he could have given Nahla, and he knew she would be delighted. Carl walked up to the cashier with Jaime and, without hesitation, paid for the cake. Happy birthday to your daughter, he said, picking up the cupcake Jaime had originally chosen. Let's see if this is worth all that speech you gave about the bakery. Jaime laughed, relaxing a little. The man was friendly, and his kindness had taken a huge weight off Jaime's shoulders at that moment. Still a little stunned, Jaime thanked him again as he carefully took the cake. But as he left the bakery, he realized something alarming: the bus had already left. Great, now I'm going to be late, Jaime muttered, looking at the clock. He had no other way to get home in time for the birthday. The man, who was also leaving the bakery, seemed to notice Jaime's discomfort. Missed the bus? Jaime sighed. Yeah. I'm not sure I'll make it home on time now. Carl thought for a moment, then spoke. Why don't I give you a ride? I have time, and it's the least I can do, considering I'm eating your cupcake. Once again, Jaime hesitated. He had already accepted the cake, and now a ride? This was too much. But looking at the clock again, he knew he had no other choice. I really don't know what to say, you've already done so much. Carl smiled. Consider it a bonus. Come on, get in the car. With no other choice, Jaime ended up accepting. He followed Carl to a luxurious car parked nearby. The interior was spotless, and Jaime couldn't help but notice the contrast between the simplicity of his life and the comfort of this car. The drive was quick, but filled with small conversations. During the ride, Jaime felt more at ease, and Carl mentioned that his name was Carl and that he owned a car dealership in town, something Jaime didn't expect. Carl talked about his work with seriousness, but there was something in him that seemed familiar to Jaime, the hardness of life, the struggle to keep things under control. When they arrived at Jaime's house, Carl stopped the car in front of the modest home. Before Jaime got out, Carl took a business card from his pocket and handed it to him. "Here's my number. I'd like to know how the party went and if your daughter liked the surprise. Could you call me later to tell me?" Jaime smiled, still incredulous at what had happened. "Sure. I promise I'll call." As he got out of the car with the cake in hand, Carl waved with a smile and drove off. Jaime watched the car pull away, feeling incredibly lucky to have met someone so kind that day. When Jaime walked into the house, he was immediately greeted by Nahla's warm embrace. Her eyes sparkled with joy when she saw her father arrive with a cake in hand. "Daddy! You got it," she exclaimed, her small arms wrapping around Jaime as she pulled him into the house. For her, it didn't matter if it was an expensive cake or not, the simple fact that they were together was enough. Jaime couldn't help but smile as he saw his daughter's happiness. The cake, which he could never have afforded on his own, seemed like a reward for all his efforts. He knew that, in that moment, nothing could be more valuable than seeing his daughter smile like that. "Look what Daddy brought, Nahla," said Kate, as she helped Jaime place the cake on the table. Kate, Rachel's sister, had always been present in Nahla's life since her mother's death. She had become the mother figure Nahla so needed, and Jaime was always grateful for that. The atmosphere of the small party was cozy. The simple, yet love-filled house was decorated with a few balloons and a banner that Kate had hung with Nahla's name on it. There weren't many presents, but the little girl's happiness radiated as she danced around the room, excited about the cake her father had brought. "Happy birthday, my love," Jaime said, placing the candle on the cake as Kate carefully lit it. Nahla looked at the lit candle with a genuine expression of joy, while Jaime and Kate exchanged a glance of complicity and happiness. They knew that, despite all the difficulties, this was a moment to be celebrated. They were together, and that was what really mattered. When Nahla blew out the candle, her smile lit up the room more than any birthday light. Jaime felt a wave of emotion wash over him, the weight of all his sacrifices seeming to disappear for a brief moment. This was the birthday he wanted to give Nahla, and he had done it, thanks to Carl's unexpected help. Later, after dinner and shared laughter between Nahla, Kate, and Jaime, the little girl finally went to sleep, still beaming with happiness. "Today was the best birthday ever, Daddy," she said before falling asleep. Jaime watched Nahla for a moment, his thoughts filled with gratitude and relief. He wished he could give his daughter everything, but he knew that, with the resources he had, it was difficult. It was then that, for the first time that day, Carl's kindness truly touched him deeply. He had done more than just pay for a cake, he had given Jaime the chance to be the father he always wanted to be for Nahla. After ensuring that Nahla was well and settled for the night, Jaime went downstairs to the kitchen, where Kate was finishing tidying up from the small party. She was washing the dishes, but something in her face indicated she was curious. Kate had always had a protective eye, not just over Nahla but also over Jaime. She knew about his financial difficulties and, more than anyone, understood how hard he worked to make Nahla's life as comfortable as possible. "That cake, it was expensive, wasn't it?" Kate asked casually, while drying a plate. "I know things are tight for you, Jaime. How did you manage to buy it?" Jaime smiled slightly, shaking his head as he sat at the table. "You won't believe the story." He told Kate about meeting Carl at the bakery, how the man had paid for the cake and offered him a ride. Kate listened attentively, her eyes widening as Jaime explained the situation. "He paid for Nahla's cake and even gave me a ride home. He said he wanted to do it because we all go through tough times." Jaime chuckled softly, still processing the stranger's kindness. And it didn't stop there. He even gave me his card and asked me to call him later to tell him how the birthday went. Kate leaned back in her chair, impressed by the story. That's incredible, Jaime. I've never heard of anyone doing something like that. Are you going to call him? Yes, Jaime replied thoughtfully. He was very kind, and I think it would be good to tell him how Nahla's day went. Maybe he just wants to know if his help made a difference. Kate looked at Jaime with a soft smile on her face. Maybe he saw something in you. Who knows, maybe that meeting was more than just a coincidence. Jaime shrugged, not wanting to get his hopes up about something that seemed so fleeting. But deep down, something in him also felt that the encounter with Carl was more than just a momentary act of kindness. Maybe Kate was right, maybe there was something more in store for him beyond that cake. I'll call him tomorrow, Jaime said, standing up from the table. But for now, I think we just need to be thankful for today. It was a good day. Kate nodded, and they continued tidying up the kitchen in silence, both grateful for having shared another special moment with Nahla. Deep down, Jaime knew that something bigger was coming, but that night, he allowed himself to rest, content with what he had achieved so far. The next day, Jaime woke up early, still reflecting on the previous day. Nahla's smile upon seeing the cake remained vivid in his mind, and as much as he tried not to get too excited, the encounter with Carl still seemed surreal. After having his simple breakfast, he decided it was time to fulfill his promise. With Carl's business card in hand, Jaime hesitated for a moment before dialing the number. What would he say? He wasn't used to calling strangers, much less to thank them for unexpected help, but he knew he owed it to Carl. When Carl answered, his voice was warm, as if he had been expecting the call. Jaime. I'm glad you called. So, how was your daughter's birthday? Jaime smiled, remembering the party. It was wonderful, Carl. She loved the cake. I can't thank you enough for what you did. Carl let out a light laugh. I'm happy to hear everything went well. It was a pleasure to help, and you made a great choice. But tell me, what do you do for a living, Jaime? The question made Jaime hesitate for a moment. He knew his answer wasn't impressive, but he had always been honest. I work in a factory, on the production line. It's not the best job, but it's what I can do for now to support my daughter. Carl remained silent for a few moments, as if reflecting on what Jaime had said. Jaime felt the slight tension on the other end of the line, but soon Carl's voice returned, more thoughtful. Have you ever thought about changing careers? I think there's something more for you, Jaime. I liked how you explained yesterday, about the bakery prices and the quality of the products. I think you have talent. Jaime frowned, confused. What? I don't know how to sell anything, Carl. I've never been a salesperson. Carl laughed, interrupting Jaime's response. You're mistaken. You sold me that cupcake very well. And I'm in need of a salesperson at my dealership. I'd like you to come in for an interview. What do you think? The idea took Jaime by surprise. He had never considered being a salesperson, much less selling cars, a market with which he had no familiarity at all. But the way Carl spoke, with confidence and without hesitation, made Jaime start to believe that maybe there was a chance for him. I don't know, Carl. I've never sold anything in my life. This is way outside my comfort zone. Don't worry about that. I started selling car parts when I was young, without knowing anything either. I learned everything along the way, and you can too. Plus, you have something I value a lot, honesty. So, what do you say? It could be a chance to give Nahla a better life. Those last words struck a chord with Jaime. Everything he did for his daughter. The opportunity to get a better job, something that could provide more security and comfort for Nahla, was exactly what he had always dreamed of. Even so, he felt the weight of insecurity, the pressure of leaving the little he already knew for something completely new. After a brief pause, Jaime took a deep breath. All right. I accept. When can I come for the interview? Carl smiled on the other end of the line. Great. You can come tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I'll have everything ready." Jaime thanked him once again and hung up, still incredulous at what had just happened. He had a job interview, something that could change his life forever. But now, anxiety began to creep in. What did he know about sales? How would he handle something so different? During his shift, the day flew by. Jaime couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. An unexpected encounter with a stranger in a bakery had the potential to change his life. Jaime informed his supervisor that he would need to arrive late the next day. He had some hours saved in his time bank, so the delay would be allowed. Even so, he got scolded by his boss, but that didn't matter, especially if he got the job. That night, while helping Nahla with her schoolwork, Jaime tried to stay calm. He knew he couldn't fail. The interview the next day was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When he finally managed to sleep, anticipation and fear mixed in his mind. The next morning, Jaime woke up earlier than usual. The soft sunlight streamed through the curtains, lighting up the small house. He dressed in the best clothes he had, an old dress shirt and neatly pressed pants. His shoes, though worn from use, were clean and polished. He looked in the mirror for a few moments, trying to get used to seeing himself in more formal attire. Nahla immediately noticed the difference. While finishing her breakfast, she looked at her father curiously. "Daddy, why are you dressed like that? Are you going somewhere important?" Jaime smiled, though he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "I have a job interview today, sweetheart. It's something new, an opportunity that came up." Nahla's eyes lit up with excitement. "An interview? You're going to get it, Daddy." "I'm sure." Nahla's confidence made Jaime's heart beat faster. She always believed in him, even when he doubted himself. "I'm going to do my best, my love," he replied with a sincere smile. As he dropped her off at school, Nahla said goodbye with a tight hug and words of encouragement. "You're going to do great, Daddy." Those words stayed in Jaime's mind as he headed to Carl's dealership. It was a decisive morning. Jaime stopped in front of Carl's dealership, feeling nervousness take over his body. The large windows reflected the bright sunlight, and inside, he could see the cars impeccably lined up in the showroom. It was an elegant place, the kind of environment he wasn't used to. Even so, Jaime took a deep breath, remembering Nahla's encouraging words. He couldn't fail, not for himself, but for her. With slightly sweaty hands, Jaime entered the dealership. He was greeted by a polite receptionist who led him to Carl's office. As they walked, Jaime observed the busy environment, seeing salespeople talking to customers and explaining the details of the cars. It was a completely different world from everything he knew. "Jaime, I'm glad you came." Carl greeted him warmly, rising from his chair to shake his hand. Jaime felt a little more at ease with Carl's welcoming attitude, but the pressure of the interview still hung in the air. Carl invited him to sit down, and the two began to talk. The interview started with simple questions about Jaime's life, his work at the factory, and his experience with customers, or rather, his lack of experience. Though nervous, Jaime responded honestly, explaining that he always tried to do his best with what he had, even when opportunities were limited. "I know you don't have experience in sales," Carl said, leaning slightly forward, "but what caught my attention yesterday was your honesty and your ability to articulate ideas clearly. That, Jaime, is what I value in a salesperson." Jaime smiled, still not fully believing that Carl saw something in him that he himself had never noticed. "I try to be straightforward. I never thought about being a salesperson, but I'm willing to learn." Carl nodded. "Learning is an important part of the job. When I started, I didn't know anything about sales either. I was just a young guy trying to find a way to survive." The conversation shifted tone as Carl began to talk more about his own past. He didn't speak with arrogance but with a humility that surprised Jaime. "I came from a poor family," Carl continued. "My first job was in a car parts store. I earned almost nothing, but I was always told that the important thing was to start somewhere. So, I started selling parts. Gradually, I gained confidence and discovered I had a talent for talking to people. It wasn't about selling the product but about understanding what people needed. Jaime listened intently. Carl was opening up in a way Jaime hadn't expected. He talked about his early years of hard work, the obstacles he faced, and how he climbed the ladder until he managed to open his own dealership. "That taught me that everyone has a chance," Carl said, looking directly at Jaime. "Sometimes all you need is someone to believe in you. And that's what I saw in you, Jaime. When you justified the price of that cupcake, I saw that you know how to think and communicate an idea. That's a valuable skill, much more than knowing the price of a car or how it works." Jaime felt touched by Carl's words. He never imagined that his explanation about a simple cupcake could have such an impact. In that moment, he began to realize that maybe there was more to himself than he had given credit for. "So," Carl continued, "I believe you can become an excellent salesperson. It won't be easy at first. You'll learn a lot, and you'll probably make some mistakes. But if you're willing to put in the effort, I'm willing to give you this chance." Jaime felt his heart beat faster. The chance to change his life was right in front of him, and though he still felt fear and uncertainty, he knew he couldn't let this opportunity slip away. He thought of Nahla, of how she always believed in him, and he felt that now was the time to believe in himself too. "I accept," Jaime said, his voice firm, though internally he was still processing everything. "I want this chance, Carl. I'll give it my best." Carl smiled, satisfied with the answer. "Well, Jaime, welcome to the team. You start next week." The two stood up, shook hands again, and Carl walked Jaime to the dealership's exit. As Jaime walked home, a mixture of anxiety and excitement washed over him. He knew he was about to embark on something completely new, but at the same time, he felt that this was the opportunity he had been waiting for all his life. As Jaime made his way home, Carl reflected on his own journey. Seeing Jaime there, nervous but determined, reminded him of himself. He remembered when he started working in a small car parts shop, with no great expectations. At first, he thought it would just be a temporary job, but things quickly changed when he met his mentor, the man who taught him the art of selling, not just cars or parts, but selling himself. Carl had grown up in a poor neighborhood, and life was never easy for him. His parents always struggled to pay the bills, and he knew from an early age that he would need to work hard to get something better. As a young man, he faced discrimination and financial difficulties, but he never let that stop him from moving forward. It was in the job as a parts salesman that Carl discovered he had a special talent for connecting with people. He knew how to listen, how to understand what people really wanted, and that set him apart from others. When he got his first job at a dealership, he began to pave his way to success. But Carl never forgot where he came from. Even now, with a successful dealership, he always remembered his days of struggle and the people who helped him along the way. He knew the value of an opportunity, and when he saw Jaime, he saw in his eyes the same determination that he himself had years ago. That's why he decided to give Jaime the chance he so desperately needed. A few months had passed since Jaime started his new job at Carl's dealership. At first, it was a challenge. Every day seemed like a battle against his own insecurities. But over time, Jaime adapted. He learned to listen to customers, understand their needs, and offer the best advice, the same skills Carl had identified in him from the beginning. Nahla noticed the changes in her father. He was more confident, more relaxed, and over time, they began to live a little more comfortably. Jaime's daily sacrifices were now being rewarded, and he was able to provide his daughter with opportunities that once seemed impossible. The small birthday parties now had bigger cakes and more decorations, but the love and unity of the family always remained the most important thing. Carl watched with pride as Jaime progressed. He knew the young man was on the right path, learning more every day and becoming a trusted salesperson. Jaime had a natural way with people, and it made him thrive in his new role. Carl always remained discreet, but he never stopped supporting Jaime, offering valuable advice and being there for him during moments of doubt. One day, while Jaime was working in the showroom, a young customer walked into the dealership. He looked nervous, uncertain, browsing the cars without knowing which one to choose. Jaime approached, noticing the young man's discomfort. "Can I help?" Jaime asked, in the calm and confident tone he had developed over the months. The young man smiled timidly. "I'm looking for a car to work as a rideshare driver, but I think I can only afford that model over there," he said, pointing to a simpler, cheaper car. "I'm just starting out, you know? I need something that's affordable." Jaime looked at the car and then at the young man, feeling an immediate connection with the situation. He recognized that feeling, the uncertainty, the desire to provide a better life for those you love, but being limited by the resources you have. Jaime saw himself in that young man. "I understand," Jaime said thoughtfully. "That car will work, but if you'll let me, I think there's a slightly better model that can help you succeed more as a driver. I want to help you." The young man looked at Jaime, surprised. "But I can't afford a better car. This is all I have." Jaime smiled slightly. "I can't do this for everyone, but I understand your situation. The car I'm suggesting has better performance, will give you fewer problems in the long run, and with it, you'll have more opportunities to grow in your work." Jaime paused briefly, remembering Carl and how he had changed his life with a simple gesture. "I can offer you this car with affordable financing, with reduced interest, at the entry price of the cheaper model. What do you think?" The young man was shocked for a moment, unable to believe what he was hearing. "You'd do that for me?" Jaime nodded, feeling the cycle of kindness complete itself. Now it was his turn to do for someone else what Carl had done for him. "Believe me, someone once did something for me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to pay it forward." The young man, visibly emotional, accepted the offer. Jaime helped him with the paperwork and saw the hope in the young man's eyes, a hope he knew well. It was the same hope he felt when Carl came into his life. As the young man drove away from the dealership with his car, Jaime looked toward the horizon, feeling the satisfaction of having passed on the gesture that had changed his own path. He knew that kindness didn't end there. It was a cycle, and he was just getting started. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and check out our next story.